Hello, everybody. Welcome. All right, as we have some people trickling in, I will get started. It looks like everybody's muted, so we just ask that you stay muted as you enter and get settled. My name is Vanessa. I'm with Canadian Women in Sport. I'm really excited to be here and to be assisting Joanne in the delivery of this workshop. There was so much demand with the initial workshop that we were able to run a second session today and get a full registration. So I think all signs point to good things for girls in sport in British Columbia going forward despite current circumstances. So as you see here, the title of the workshop is Retaining Girls in Sport, Recreation and Physical Activity. I'll take a moment actually to acknowledge the land that we're on. I'm in Toronto presently, and this is traditional territory for many nations, including the Mississauga, the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And it's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also want to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Finally, Indigenous women and girls are underrepresented in this country. They face multiple barriers to participation in sport and physical activity at all levels, and it's our intention to continue to build relationships that will allow us to better address this gap through our work. So a little bit about this workshop and kind of the origins of this. In 2018, the government of Canada announced the target to achieve gender equity in sport by 2035. And so Canadian Parks and Rec Association has pursued this project with that in mind and with the target groups for girls and women that you see at the bottom of the screen. So ages 9 to 15, new mothers, women aged 55 plus, and girls with intersecting identities. This workshop series has been moved to virtual. It's a national workshop series, so we are speaking to people at every province and territory. Hopefully in a non-COVID world, we can meet again in person. But for more information on community grants and programs, just hang on until the end or partway through the workshops, because we're going to be talking about a lot of opportunities. Lastly, so this CPRA project on engaging women and girls in rec sport addresses 1, 2, 4, and 5 of the goals that you see from the Pathways to Wellbeing, which is a framework developed in 2015. So the first goal will focus on fostering active living through physical recreation, increasing inclusion and access to recreation for populations that face constraints to participation, which is goal number 2. Supportive environments being goal number 4. So we'll ensure the provision of supportive physical and social environments that encourage participation in recreation and build strong and caring communities. And then lastly, for goal number 5, this is rec capacity. So ensuring that the continued growth and sustainability of the recreation field. So we're going to be hitting each of these during the workshop. And if you have questions specific to that, please, I welcome them in the chat. So before I pass the mic to Joanne, I will be monitoring the chat, and any other tech issues that you experience, please feel free to send me a direct message. I will say that you're really lucky to be joined here today by Joanne. She lives and breathes sport and recreation in the province of British Columbia. She's been affiliated with Canadian Women in Sport for over 2 decades, delivering different content on our behalf. And she is a former BC RPA employee, I believe, in communications and developing a lot of public documents such as newsletters and other key tools. So without further ado, Joanne, I pass you the mic.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Joanne Steigel-Lotz, and I'm grateful to be speaking to you today on Coast Salish, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Stolo, and Musqueam lands. It's full circle for me because my first job as a summer camp instructor was at the Steaston Community Center many years ago. And here I am today speaking back with my people that I love. In between, I've worked at the Vancouver School Board as the district athletics coordinator. I worked at Sport BC as the communications manager, Promotion Plus as executive director, and as stated, the BCRPA. I loved editing your beautiful magazines, and I loved going to all your symposiums and workshops. It's a great organization. So let's begin by looking at our agenda. Welcome and introductions will include some icebreaker activities, well, just one actually, as well as cover the main objectives. Setting the context will cover the key terms and trends that will act as a foundation of the knowledge of gender equity. Before jumping into designing programs for women and girls, we will cover the factors that are influencing girls to stay or leave sport or physical activity, and what is in your control as program leaders and administrators. Lastly, we will build on these ideas by understanding the implementation practices that set girls up for success. For the purposes of this webinar, it's a mouthful for me to say sport and physical activity and recreation all the time, comma, comma, comma. So I'm often going to shorten that for sport, but please know that I really am talking about the spectrum most of the time. Also, while many of the key learnings are applicable to both girls and women, primarily today we will be speaking about girls and young women. Perhaps there will be a follow-up webinar more focused on the older age group. I think that would be very interesting, but wait and see. Please, again, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. And we will do our best to make this as engaging as possible with you, because I know you probably really don't want to listen to me for 90 minutes. So we'll do our best to make it interactive. And the first way we're going to do that is with a rename activity. So it's going to help us a little bit navigate in Zoom. Perhaps many of you are experts now, but actually for me, I'm still learning a lot. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rename ourselves, and I will show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on my name. Well, sometimes it doesn't want to work. I can click on the dots then and pull down and get the rename function, and that'll come up. And then I have to move my mouse on my multiple screens, so I'm still figuring this out too. And I'm going to put in, sorry, and it's not working for me. I'm going to put a comma. I'm going to put my pronouns, which are she and her. And then I'm going to along with that so that we can understand where you're coming from and try to see where you all are located in this beautiful province of ours. And now maybe I can view some of your names. I did notice a lot of people from Nanaimo. Welcome. Okay, and as you're doing that, we are going to also start with a fun, well, hopefully fun, an informative poll to get things started. Question 1, I was inspired to be physically active or play sports growing up by 1, family member or friend, professional athlete, educator, recreation leader, or number 5, I didn't play sports growing up. We'll give you a few seconds, and it's really fun for me to watch these numbers coming in. No professional athletes so far. If you do pick a professional athlete, we'd love to know the name in the chat. Oh, there's a couple. Did you see the question, Vanessa, in the chat from Marie? And I'm really happy to see so many responses here. 69% of you chose a family member, and that was my experience as well. My dad coached on my soccer team, and I have fond memories of skiing as a family. Also, it's interesting to note, though, that the stats show that if mothers are active, then girls are much more active. Family values are really passed down generation to generation and are really important to start. If we have unactive moms, we need to stop that. Okay, so let's go on to workshop objectives. Okay, and am I freezing? Okay, well, that's not good. We'll have to see if anybody else has a problem with hearing me. I hope that's not the case. We're going to go 90 minutes and we'll talk about foundational concepts with practical application to empower you to design programs that will enhance girls' engagement and extend their participation in lifelong physical activity, whether it be competitive sport or recreation. For example, best case scenario is that a young girl is exposed to a tennis session, perhaps through a partnership with the provincial sport organization at her school. So she brings home a little brochure to her parents detailing lessons at the local community center. So she develops a love for the game and continues playing with her family and friends and maybe even the school team in high school or university. After dabbling in competitive tournaments throughout her adulthood, she continues to play recreationally as a senior for fitness, fun, and socialization, but is considering trying pickleball at the community center because they have advertised a free come try it opportunity. So you see, if we are successful, all of us in this sector, we will learn how to have those cradle to grave opportunities for more people. Okay, now some context. We're going to learn about equity versus equality. So the definitions are fairly common, but often mistaken as interchangeable. So quickly,
Hey, Joanne.
I think that many of you are comfortable with this. Using the bicycle. Yes.
I'm just gonna chime in because it's quite choppy. I know we weren't experiencing this when we were on ahead of the workshop, but maybe if you hop off and reset, that might help, and I can continue in the interim.
Okay, by clicking, you want me to click the original link that you sent me this morning?
Yeah, I think you might have to leave and then come back, and I'll keep my eye out for you and let you back in, but it's just it's a little too choppy. I believe you're frozen right now. Okay, as we wait for Joanne to come back, I'm going to advance the ball and hopefully
and I'm hearing, I'm not hearing you at all. Really bad. So, okay, I'm leaving. I'll come back.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. Let's see. All right, can I just get somebody in the chat to confirm that they can hear me consistently and it's not choppy? Confirm, we can hear you. Okay, great. So ideally it'd be Joanne right now, but tech issues. What can you do? But if she's back, then she can just continue where I leave off. So for anyone who is familiar with Zoom and Annotate, I encourage you to use different stamps on the next few slides to let us know how familiar you are with the terms. We'll say that a check mark is, I know this one, I know it really well, I could teach it to a child. A star is, I've heard of it, but I need to become more familiar or get a better understanding of it. And then if we get to one that you've never heard before, just put a question mark. So when you're looking to annotate, at the top of your screen, there is a little button that says View Options. When you click that, there's a drop down and one of them is Annotate. And then you'll get a whole new menu bar that has all these cool stamps or markers or anything like that. So feel free to put those directly on the slide to let us know your comfort level. So Joanne was correct in discussing equity and equality. Canadian Women in Sport, as an equity organization, we tend to answer this question quite often because people believe they're interchangeable or they're not really aware of the difference. But it's illustrated here in the photo. So equality, really, the measurement starts at the starting line. So everybody is given the same resources and opportunities with the expectation to get those same results. But as you can see, everybody is unique with unique needs, and that doesn't always work. Equality considers those needs from the starting line and really values everybody reaching the same finish line. So you can see on the right-hand side that there are different bicycles to accommodate everybody. So that's really the innate difference between those two terms. In order to establish gender equity in sport, there are some funding opportunities available to you, and we'll get to speak to those a little bit more later on. But Canadian Parks and Rec Association has their Gender Equity in Recreational Sport Community Grant Initiative. You need to jump on that though, because that application period for that closes in 2 days, so Friday, December 11th. We have our WISE grant, which is closed for this year. But again, it really aims at the different levels of the sports sector and figuring out, how we can create a more gender equitable sport. And then Via Sport has their Lead Forward grant in British Columbia, and I believe the application period for that is closed as well. But just so you know that people are thinking about this and funding is available. Okay, I'm getting word from Joanne that she's back, but her connection is still unstable. So we can continue if Joanne, you want to speak to intersectionality, but with your camera off. Is that what you're suggesting?
Can we try it? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yep.
Okay, great. I'd just like to thank so much for stepping in there, and I'll keep my eye on you if you give me the pull if it's not working. I'd love an example, just going back to gender equity in recreation centers, is that need for women-only gym times and fitness center areas. That's something that you are certainly doing in practice still. And if you have the support of your city, district, or governing body, I believe that these gender equity policies can be used as more of a carrot and stick on your user groups. You have the power to ask if the Minor Hockey Association or the Martial Arts Club has a gender equity policy. And if they don't, you've got the expertise. You can work with them to improve, to help them apply for these gender equity grants and the WISE grants. I have just read some of those previous grant recipients, and many of those projects can be copied in your communities. For example, there was a great Women in Squash program and also female lacrosse programs that are a really wonderful way to interact with your local Indigenous nations. Finally, Via Sport here in British Columbia offers grants for women and leadership, and I recently got $2,500 for the Minor Hockey Association that I am on the board with, and it's going to be a good experience for us to use those funds to help female coaches get their certification. Okay, so here we go. I'm at Intersectionality. Thumbs up for hearing me. Thank you, great. As many of you probably know, in practice, intersectionality considers the layers of an individual's identity and how those layers impact how a person moves through the world. In the following section, you will see how the factors of someone's identity correlate to the likelihood of them staying or even joining sport. It's a necessary tool to apply when designing and planning programs at all levels to ensure safety, inclusion, representation, equal opportunity, etc. Also, I believe that, Vanessa, you're going to update a file on the chat that has more foundational terms that people can review in their own time.
Yes, I'll be sharing a file in the chat momentarily so that we can include some more, like you said, there's some more foundational terms that we won't be able to get to today. but that'll be there in a moment.
Thanks. Okay, so I think I'm ready to go to long-term development model. This is sports model, and it's a valuable resource that does consider the Canadian sport experience across the lifespan, that cradle to grave that we were talking about. You know, going back to that tennis example, I hope you realize that there are over 80 provincial sport organizations that are really wanting to work with their recreation broadly. I challenge you to go back to your community centers and think of how your services link with the sports that make sense in your neck of the woods. In terms of planning for 2021, because we all want to absolutely forget 2020, what activities could you focus on to ensure or to work towards higher gender equity goals? Which ones work better in a post-COVID world? Wrestling, not a chance. Fencing, though, yes. Table tennis, yes. Cycling, yes. Badminton, golf, cross-country skiing. And I have a nice cross-country skiing example, actually. I hope many of you have heard about Becky Scott. I think we have that on the next slide, Vanessa. She has brought her love of cross-country skiing full circle, bringing her sport to the north and remote communities. Is anybody, I'm curious, actually, I haven't had a chance to look at your communities, but I hope we have a lot of representation from north of Kamloops. And if any of you have heard about Becky Scott's program or have used it, that would be wonderful. And what she's doing is she's going into the remote communities, bringing the skills and the equipment of cross-country skiing, and she's sharing her love of the sport. Now, I know that not everyone is interested in playing a sport, but we want to make sure folks are active. And although this model was developed for sport, our end goal is all the same. So, you know, many people now are turning to fitness classes as a way to stay active, and they're turning online and Instagram. I know many of you have successfully pivoted, and I've really enjoyed looking and seeking out those opportunities. I grew up in Richmond, so I like to stay connected to that community, and I've been looking on Instagram on the things they're doing at the Oval, and locally too. It's just great how you guys have adapted. Okay, we're going to do another poll. I would like you to answer the question of what percentage of girls aged 6 to 18 are currently not participating in any kind. And I hope that those of you that struggled with the poll can see it this time.
Great, so I already see someone has circled their answers and then some other people have annotated. So feel free to annotate in the quadrant that you think is the correct answer. I've also just poked a message in the chat. So if you can't annotate, you can put your guess directly in the chat. You'll have about 15 more seconds to make your best guess. All right, this is more evenly split than usual. 6 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, so unfortunately, the correct answer is 62%. So yeah, I'm seeing some upset faces. It is quite upsetting. So the age range of girls who were asked this were 6 to 18 across Canada. So 62% of those girls are not physically active in any capacity, which is not good. So I'll clear those annotations, and then Joanne, I'll move you on to the next slide. It'll just take me a sec.
Great. And you know, this is really tragic, and maybe it only captures that sort of week. I mean, during COVID, things have changed. For example, in my kids' school, I have 3 teenagers, and they've gone to 2 classes in 10 weeks program. So my kids are only getting physical education, albeit 12 hours in a week, which is great, but only for 10 weeks, and then nothing at the school. So because school sports has not uptaked as well, I even noticed in my kids a real decline. So we're going to talk about the information we've learned from something called the Rally Report. The data from that poll that we just did and this table now are from Canadian Women and Sports Rally Report. It explores current Canadian trends in sport participation with a specific focus, again, on those 6 to 18-year-olds that Vanessa mentioned. And overall, the data shows that sport participation levels are much lower for girls than boys. Among girls who participated in sport, there's a dramatic dropout rate observed with 1 in 3 girls leaving sport by late adolescence. In comparison, the dropout rate for teenage boys is only 1 in 10. Sport participation rates for Canadian girls decline steadily from childhood to adolescence, with as many as the 62% not playing at all. But unfortunately, when it's compounded, as you can see, less likely to participate with those if the girl has a disability or if her family earns less than $50,000 annually. Because that's depressing, I did have the next slide of 3 role models who are inspirational and defied the odds. I wonder if you want to annotate, if you know these women, you recognize these women. These are amazing women in British Columbia. On the right, we have our new MLA. And I did actually try to figure out if she has the portfolio for recreation. And it didn't really say. So I hope that, that would make sense that her portfolio includes recreation. Then we have Carla Qualtrough. This woman is amazing. She is a mother, she's a Paralympian, she's an MP, and she only has 10% of her vision. So she accomplishes just so much. And then Michelle Stillwell, again, a Paralympian, an amazing woman, mother of I believe a child with learning on the spectrum, and just amazing. So when we have role models, girls can be inspired, even if they have barriers to participation. So the fun thing is you and your capacities, you can make a difference on some of those areas, like some of the factors, like financial. Lots of your community centers or districts even offer free access to your facilities for the grade 4 or 5 program. I think that I heard about that in Saanich or in the Victoria area as one of the districts that started that. And that's fantastic. So let's go on to the Canadian landscape. Again, the Rally Report looked at quality of programming, and this is where the recreation centers come in. What was their perception of quality of programming? Do you want to annotate here?
Yeah, so once again, everybody can make their best guess, and at their response, you can annotate, you can circle the answer, or you can add your guess to the chat directly. I see some people are already annotating, which is great. Hello, everybody. Again, pop it in the chat if you're having some troubles. Okay, we'll take about 5 more seconds. I feel like 33 and 28 have possibly the most guesses. I'm seeing a couple of 33s in the chat as well. 3, 2, 1. All right, so Andrea had a great question in the chat about how quality is defined, which is going to be responded to in the next screen. Let me just clear these annotations. So the correct answer was 43%. And Joanne, if you want to dive into what's on the left side of the screen and how quality was defined by the girls who were surveyed.
Yeah, exactly. So that this is their perception. So, we're not talking about empirical data here. We're talking about girls' perceptions, and they didn't think it was appropriately designed for girls. They didn't believe that the quality coaching was at the highest level. They felt there wasn't enough positive role models and poor overall experiences, and that sport was too competitive. And that's great, because that's what we do in recreation. We bring down the competitive experiences usually, and we make it more fun and recreational. And that's why it's so imperative that we work together with you to just make these girls' experiences better. Okay, so now we're going to go the influential factors. So I'm really going to skip over the benefits, because I really know that you know this as professionals in the field, but there is some interesting things we can dive into here. And if you would like more specific information, there's great resources, again, on our website. For example, Keeping Girls in Sport is an e-module that goes into a lot more details. One aspect that just sort of hits close to home is and an area that I think resonates with our new families and our new members of the community is the academic performance piece. And I know you might not feel that you're connected to that, but you can help. Like, you can help bring that knowledge home to families. I mean, I've just completed with my son the sort of, I would call it quite onerous UBC application process. And I was quite struck by how much the impact on the kids' background and their life experience and their work experience and all of the other things, which is fantastic, besides their grades. So do new families realize that having participation in sport or recreation, whether not even at a competitive level, is part of that multifaceted persona that UBC in particular and most of the other universities, colleges, and programs are looking at now? And also at a higher level in terms of leadership, there's lots of studies, but in particular an Ernst & Young study that showed successful female executives are way more likely to have played sport. They surveyed 821 high-level executives and found that 90% of them played competitive sports. So also, I'd just like to say that if they're playing, they're not on a screen. I know my 15-year-old daughter is, I think, completely addicted to Netflix, and I'm so happy when she's out on a court, in a field, on the ice, whatever. Okay, so we are going to go to the next slide and talk about the sociological barriers. We know girls experience barriers to sport at a number of junctures. The sociological model is a helpful way to sort of quickly look at that. It has 4 spheres: interpersonal, intrapersonal, environment, and policy, societal. As you probably know, I'll be really quick here. The interpersonal is sort of anything that a girl may think or feel that prevents her from participating. It can be those internalized stereotypes, like believing a specific sport is too rough for me, or she will be perceived to have a specific sexual preference by participating in a specific sport. Maybe she doesn't want to be seen as disruptive by her family. So I'd love for us to have these sort of myth-busting lessons into our physical lessons. Like, talk to girls about what it means to be athletic, what they're thinking about. You know, take that time to just sort of dispel those stereotypes and perceptions, because they really are quite common. The interpersonal sphere considers the close relationships that influences a girl's understanding. So, does she have an emotional or economic support of her family? Are her friends participating? That's why it's so important that we have Bring a Friend Day or Try It days or 2-for-1 days or family discounts. I mean, whatever it takes, girls like to come in groups. And so that will increase our numbers too. The environmental sphere considers the different access points, literally and figuratively. Are the programs even available? Are there other girls in the programs? Are there appropriate cultural measures in place for a Muslim girl, for example? So one example, sorry to be repetitive there, but I have recently learned that in the city of New Westminster, we have people from New Westminster here. I'd love to see, you can put up your hand. They built a new pool, and not only were privacy swims planned at the new pool in terms of programming for Muslim girls and women, as well as the LGBTQ community, they were included in the design stage. And I thought that was a fascinating example of being proactive. Another thing, as we pivot to a post-COVID world, I mean, what about backyard, indoor, residential pool, and ocean and lake programs? If we have to get more outdoors, we have lots of swimming instructors laid off, I know, because my son is one. So let's make those connections. You know, you guys do the fantastic job of teaching our children to swim. Now we're just asking you to refer them to the aquatic sports next. You know, who's great for diving? Who fits water polo? Racing for swimming? And lastly, in addition to the right equipment, are the role models present in the coaching staff and program administrators? Does your facility have a diversity-friendly hiring policy? I know that many of you do. It's just, again, the reminder that if they see role models, girls will just feel more comfortable. So let's be creative and go to where girls are already. If they're not coming to your facility, you may need to go out, like brownies, guides, library programs, arts, and even band. Connect with these agencies and use your young, enthusiastic leaders to incorporate more physical activity into all the other programming that's going on. For example, let's take the West Vancouver Youth Band, which is a fantastic program, but let's suggest, if they're interested, that they could be more of a true marching band. I also have another example of my son as the swimming instructor. He has the dubious job every year of screening the Girl Guides before they go to Camp Olaf, and he failed so many of them. He hates that day. And then those young girls, they have to wear a life jacket, which is important. But I was always saddened that it was seemed as a punishment. And maybe if we could be proactive, we could work with the Girl Guides over the year with the swimming lessons incorporated, so then they can go to the camp and everybody can fully participate. Lastly, policy. Is the program adequately funded? Is it held at a time that girls can attend? Are there streams for girls to progress? I love the example in Edmonton, and maybe let me know if anybody's doing this in British Columbia. They have a free play for kids programs. It is a free after-school program for 4,000 kids. They pick up the kids in the vulnerable schools. Many are newcomers, some are refugees. And this was the type of program that helped make Alphonso Davies the great soccer player that he is today. All equipment and registrations are free, transportation is organized, and they're picked up again from their school. So 3 to 5, they're busy. It's just the perfect opportunity for these kids. Okay, next slide. So Vanessa, how did you want to do this one? Are we going to break up?
No, so we're going to stay all together and we're going to do another chat storm. So I'll ask that based on the examples that Joanne gave and some of your experience in the field, if everybody could just jump into the chat and give a couple of examples of some of the limiting factors. So then Joanne, you can read through the chat and I'll do a live annotation on the screen capturing that. So I'll ask we'll just stick to the left-hand side for now. So if you could jump in the chat and give 1 or 2 examples. We just want to fill up the chat with factors that limit girls and young women's experience in sport, recreation, and physical activity. So this is everybody. Everybody just go for it.
Okay, great. Stereotypes that live.
So Joanne, if you can read some of those out to me, that would be great.
Stereotypes: confidence, shy, like self-confidence. Good. Age, accessibility, self-esteem, finances. These are great, guys. They are overweight. The uniform doesn't fit. Fantastic. The time doesn't work. Body image, intimidation, lack of coaching role models, high pressure and need to specialize too soon, their home life, lack of experience, attitudes of peer group, the need to be easy access, in other words, within walking distance, their changing body, they're lazy. Coaching is too competitive versus cooperative. They don't see themselves represented in sport on social media. Wow, you guys are really intelligent. You can probably give this workshop. These are all great. Addiction to technology, need for more education. Their friends don't want to play. Not getting encouragement from home. They haven't learned the fundamental movement skills and are too scared to try a sport. The structure of the facilities is not conducive to the cultural needs. Fantastic. They're embarrassed. I really like that one. Thank you, Sonia. From Ashley in Nanaimo, social culture with technology. Right.
Okay, I think I'm out of space on this one. Some people did their own annotation, which is really appreciative. And I already see some people filling up on the right-hand side, which is great. Why don't we get everybody starting to enter the chat with the things that enhance girls and young women's participation in sport, recreation, and physical activity.
Wonderful. Friendships, positive role models, support from home, enjoyment, encouragement, fun, skilled coaches. They have an active family. It's a personal trainer, non-competitive opportunities, inclusive. This is great, guys. Bang on. And so we're going to go now into the specifics. So we're going to dive into these factors and what are the details. Where is the proof in the pudding?
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Really.
I did save that and have a screenshot of it, so I'll be able to share that in the follow-up.
Perfect. So thank you for those contributions. So as a group, you came up with many, and having to consider all of these factors and more can be overwhelming. For this reason, we're going to address the top 4 factors that lead girls in Canada to leave and the top 3 that keep them, according to this 2020 Rally report. Now, there are time commitments such as school, part-time work, taking care of siblings or older families. And then we'll also talk about financial barriers, injuries, and sport or physical activity no longer being fun. Conversely, girls identified that having fun as a group, competing and working hard, actually surprised me was their real desire here to work hard, and positive coaching are the highlights of their sport experience and keep them coming back for more. And these are the facets of recreational sport. I mean, not enough time to commit to a competitive team. Try our fitness drop-ins or female only open gyms. It's too expensive. Again, we have that free grade 4 and 5 program. We have Looney Swims, we have free programs. And maybe, may I suggest, do you have a designated person that can navigate the difficult financial assistance programs like Kids Sport and Canadian Tire and Jumpstart, and even Hockey Canada has come out with financial aid this year. And speaking of which, I have a lovely video I'd like to share from Kids Sport. Not sure if you've heard of this organization. I know that many of you probably are
Imagine
local
not
chapters.
having the chance to play sports as a kid. Imagine not having those memories, those experiences. Imagine your childhood without them.
If I wasn't able to play, I would have missed my friends. I would miss being active and the chance of being competitive. Basketball has taught me how to work as a team, how to communicate, and how to adapt to any situation. My goal it is to play for Team Canada and make it to the WNBA.
The skills kids learn through sports are carried with them throughout their lives. But all across Canada, kids are being left on the sidelines because they don't have the resources to play. We owe all kids a chance to experience everything that sport has to offer. Help unleash the full potential in every child. Visit kidsport.ca so all kids can play.
Great, thank you. So that's just one way we can address the financial barriers. We're going to talk a little bit more about injuries. Maybe you can connect young girls to your personal trainers a bit more, make these connections for rehab. What about preparing kids for PE 8? I know that there's summer school for every other subject, for math, prepare for math 8. I know my kids have had to go to that one. And why don't we prepare kids for PE? Because as you say, many of them don't have the basic foundational fundamental movement skills for one reason or another to get them ready. And so, I mean, I just watched it the other day when I peeked into the gym, which I haven't done all year because we're not allowed in, but I looked at my son's PE 9 class, and here he is, 180 pounds, 6 foot tall, playing volleyball against these little kids who obviously have had little or no experience. I mean, the levels of abilities are just so wide. It's really not fair. So let's help them prepare, and that's something that maybe we could do in the summer before grade 8 or grade 9 starts. It's not fun. That's what recreation does. You know, we don't have to keep score. We don't have to have uniforms. We can wear what you want. There's no trash talking, no intimidation, and all levels are welcome. Thanks, Vanessa. I'm ready to move on now. I'm sorry to have jumped around there a little bit. So now we're going to go into those more details. Design for girls, the key considerations. We're going to talk about these 4. Consulting your stakeholder and organizations that specialize in this area. Canadian Women in Sport is a great place to start, and we're so glad you're here with us today. But obviously we want you to go locally. Building supportive environments through positive coaching and recreation leaders that prioritize social connections. So that's the key. And I know, based on the fact that the youth leaders in my community email and text my daughter specifically to say, are you coming Friday night? We missed you last week. That has just been so valuable, and I'm so grateful. Fostering fun. With each interaction and activity, it's the primary goal, and the prevention of injuries. I am a double knee surgery recipient, and it's all I can do to try with my kids to say, you know, you don't want to end up like me. Don't overdo it. I was a competitive runner and really just overtrained for my abilities. So we want to learn from those mistakes. Consult. It's also sort of evaluation, right? It's about figuring out what we're doing well and finding out how we can get better. There's a good word in sport, we call it Kaizen, and it's a Japanese word meaning constant improvement. And I think that's really great, and that's what you guys can do. So don't wait until the end of the program evaluation form. How about quick survey monkeys midway to the girls directly, a different one to the parents? You know, just dive deep in finding out what they do well. And if any of you guys have some examples of doing that, we'd love to hear. This is about sharing best practices around British Columbia. If your objective is to engage more newcomer girls or women, consider consulting a settlement agency and ideally speaking with the girls and women directly. And in BC, what are some of those agencies? I've heard about Mosaic and Success. Do any of you have some examples that you could share? Also make sure that there is a diversity, of course, with socioeconomics and abilities. Next slide, please. Building supportive environments. When considering girls' key motivations to participation, creating a social and emotionally safe space for your participants and staff is a priority. Of course, it's what you do already. But it's not limited to just the physical space and emergency procedures, which, in fairness, some of these beautiful architecturally award-winning LED buildings, I mean, girls don't really care about that. They want to see posters on the wall of Christine Sinclair and Khadijah Buchanan. So just think about that lens of girls. These three factors, physical environment, social environment, and physical and mental health, are all interrelated. This is the part where you decide, am I going to run a girls only program or a co-ed program? Am I just going to Next slide, please. So we need to understand what motivates girls to play and stay. As you can see here, there's a key distinction for girls and boys. For many boy participants, performance enhances their social position. Historically, we've sort of known that. For girl participants, social acceptance enhances individual and group performance. So they need to feel accepted first. Then she has the security to try without fear of social repercussions from making mistakes or failing. Effort then leads to improved performance, which fuels even more effort. But we can't forget that root of social connections. And that's why managing those sometimes dicey group dynamics is so important. I mean, I know the challenge. I have a 15-year-old daughter. It's often impossible, but that's why you hire young people that sometimes can do better than parents. Supportive environments. Next slide, please. Supportive environments go beyond the X's and O's of programs. We define
Joanne, I think your audio is cutting out a bit.
Okay.
I can hear you now well. If you just restart with this slide, we lost you for a bit there.
Okay. Come on, internet, work for me. Supportive environments go beyond the X's and O's of programs. We define such environments as welcoming, emphasizing the values of safe sport and being physical active, prioritizing social connection and food. Always provide snacks if you can. It's a high order, but it's just so well loved. Exposing girls to women role models. I mentioned the poster examples. How about social media? Having menstrual products. I believe I saw a stat this week that 43% of girls don't participate because of that time of the month issues. So if we provide it in a free format, if we provide the equipment, if we provide spare clothing in case they don't have the right clothing, I think that's fantastic. We want to lead to the empowerment of girls in and outside of sport. Sorry, I haven't moved yet. I have a great program that is a lovely connection between the community center and the school. And it's the FAST program, and it is first aid swim training. So my son did this as part of grade 9, and he was by far a minority. There was mostly girls in the class, and it taught them their first aid, obviously, and then their bronze medallion and their bronze cross, and it led them all through the year to the goal of getting hired by the aquatic center for that entry-level aquatic leader position. So my son and a couple of his peers were lucky enough to get hired. And I mean, that's life-changing. So those two girls and him that got hired, their first jobs, then they kept on going, and now they're all lifeguards, certified lifeguards, and swim girls, be leaders at the aquatic center, have a job that pays over $20 an hour, is truly life-altering. We'd love to have many of those programs. I mean, I think it benefits you. You get to see those young kids all year. You get to pick and choose which ones you'd like to hire, and they're super grateful to have that opportunity. I also have a really good, I think it's a good story from Nanaimo. Nanaimo's loss is Vancouver's gain, because Vancouver just hired the first female fire chief, and she came from Nanaimo. And I think that's fantastic to have those role models in the community. There's also a great program which sort of piggybacks female firefighting, and that's called Camp Ignite. It's something that you could host in your community. I believe it's hosted in Vancouver and in North Van. And it's encouraging or inspiring girls to think about becoming a firefighter. And I mean, you can expand that to all those boot camp type of experiences for aspiring fire, police, North Shore Rescue. I mean, who's watching that fantastic documentary on the Knowledge Network? Army, Navy. There's a lot of girls who are just would love that chance. So I am ready for the next slide. Okay, role models. Supportive environments cannot exist without visible role models and champions of gender equity. To reap the full benefits of role models, they must consciously practice healthy habits and adopt positive attitudes that participants can learn from. So representation is really necessary. You know, my daughter has she follows lots of people on Instagram, but they're not the same quality of people that you've hired to run your fitness program. So we really want to profile your females and males who are just incredible role models. And I love that some of the things that I see on social media, which is meet Joe, he works in the fitness center, and meet Joanne, she works in the aquatic center. Those are, I think, are really important, but we just have to make sure that the young girls are seeing that. There is a fantastic program called Fast and Female, which you could host in your community centers. I know that I attended in Richmond a few years ago with my daughter, and it's started by Vanessa. You're going to have to help me. Chandra, what's her last name again? I lost it in my head.
Crawford.
Thank you, Crawford. And she goes into, it's all across Canada, going into communities and inspiring girls not to quit, just to stay in sport. And if they don't want to stay in one sport, then they can move to another sport. It's a really positive example, and we really encourage you to host it in your community. And how about WickFest? Do we have people from Surrey? Surrey has hosted Haley Wickenheiser's hockey tournament for a number of years, and this year they went digital. I'd love to hear how that went. Haley Wickenheiser, of course, as now a doctor and as such a fantastic hockey player, and now she's also been hired to work as a coach and advisor for the NHL. She's just an incredible role model. What about how we can leverage more role models in other ways, building social connections? How about some great films? Does anybody want to add to the chat some movies with strong female characters that they would recommend and that they could, you know, even show in the youth lounge or in the big screen in the foyer, or even recommend to the female groups in their programs? Thank you. Jess must be my generation, because Bend It Like Beckham is certainly one of oldie but goodies. Miracle Season is one currently on Netflix now about volleyball. A League of Their Own also shows my age as an example. Battle of the Sexes is about tennis, and Soul Surfer too is just fantastic. And you know, surfing is now an Olympic sport. So that's a good example. Come on, guys, I know you have some more movies. And then naming role models, Kadisha Buchanan, Bianca Andreescu, Brooke Henderson in golf, Kia Nurse in basketball. Sorry, I am going to get to that great picture of the skateboarding is the next slide. And that is also a new Olympic sport. I mean, who would know that we're at this, and crazy is it breakdancing is also now for Paris, is it 2024? So, I mean, you never know. You could have the next Olympian breakdancer in your community center doing one of your dance classes. Honestly, we don't really care what sport it is. We just care that they're active. Okay, fostering fun. Next slide, please. This is how girls define fun. When surveyed, girls noted positive group dynamics, getting to put in effort. So they don't, this is interesting. And what we mean here is that girls don't want you to like give them the pink shirts and go say, now go play on your own. They want to be challenged. They want you to don't treat them less, right? They just want this chance to self-actualize, to be their best. Positive coaching are the big 3 indicators of that fun experience. And I have an example from Janet at the BCRPA. She shared with me how her daughter's coach of dragon boating makes it fun. And it is on her own volunteer time. But I think it's a simple thing that maybe just the coach or the program leader starts, and then maybe it takes a life of its own. So this club, the girls on the Dragon Boat team, they meet on Friday night over Zoom and for game nights, and they do board games or online games, and it's just purely social. Then on Sunday nights together on Zoom, they do the physical activity and the workout. And this is how they've been able to keep connected all through COVID when they weren't able to get together as a team. Other ways we can do fun, and I'd love to hear some more ideas from you in the chat. $1 Million Baby. Oh, thanks, Jeff. That is a crazy story, but the ending just kills me. And Chalk to India. I don't know this, Amy, so thank you so much for that example. I'm going to look that one up. I'd love to learn more about that. Obviously, it has a cultural connection. Can you think of things like crazy hair days? Rotate who leads the warm-up, music, let them play their music, or treat that as a win. You know, whoever works the hardest gets to pick the music next time. My daughter Julia's field hockey team has these crazy socks, like polka dotted and colors and fun, that they wear for practices. They have backwards clothing days, and for the sort of standard team photos, the girls, the girls go crazy, and they you know, do crazy hair, and they do weird wigs or glasses. They sort of poke fun at themselves, which I think is just fantastic. Moving right along to positive team dynamics. It's critical to build positive team dynamics because it enhances those girls' performances. It addresses the societal pressures that lead girls to drop out of sport at twice the rate of boys. And we want to prepare coaches to recognize and disrupt the signs of girls' disengagement. Positive experience keep people engaged, and negative ones, Janet from BCRPA told me this is your lingo, that folks vote with their feet and they just simply don't come back. So let's think about how to infuse social connections. Oh, I love, Jess has some other examples. Thank you. Center Stage, I don't know that one. Stick It and Blue Crush. Thank you. Adding unstructured time and offering informal activities that are participant driven. So this is like this soft start time. Can you have that first 15 minutes to allow participants to warm up to their favorite music, give them free time to work on their chosen skill, ask girls to collaborate on their own, find out what they like to do and what they don't like to do. I think sometimes we just go through the motions of a specific warm up and we don't really change it up to make it fun. Shout outs at the end of practices or the sessions where girls have the opportunity to lift each other up or one chosen person is really important. You know, shout out to Jane, who finally was able to get a 3-point. These will develop closer relationships. Notice how your group interacts is key to their enjoyment and ongoing participation. Having people work in pairs for activities and build in questions to the activities so that they learn something new about each other. Like everyone who likes vanilla ice cream over there, anybody who likes chocolate ice cream, go over here. You know, just silly, fun things that we find out about, you know, who's vegetarian, you know, to break the ice. Now, we know that some women are self-conscious, but really the positives, saying the positives, I hear 7 times versus 1 negative is the way to go. So positive coaching. Okay, trying hard. Like most people, girls find satisfaction in giving their best effort, referring back to those intrinsic motivators. This does not require that a program This does require that a program leader first creates an environment where girls feel comfortable by showing their vulnerability. Here, I'd really like to recommend a TED Talk called Be Brave, Not Perfect. And we're really just talking about girls taking risks and not doing something because they don't know how to do it perfectly, but trying and failing and that being encouraged. Okay. Positive coaching. Go to the next slide. Contrary to popular belief, positive coaching, it's not criticizing or competitive avoidance. It's coaches being able to show they care about participants by listening to them and coaching with patience and encouragement. It's about helping others to be the best they can be. Your feedback and support along the way is critical. For example, if you're in a kickboxing class and you're the instructor, you need to say those 6 positive comments for every 1 improve on comment. Like you could say, I like the way you're holding your hands at the height of your chin. Now I'd like to see you punch with a little more energy, but keep up the good work with the kicks, and so on and so on. So here are some other key things to try. Names. I forget everyone's name, so I still use name tags. I just find them really handy. Welcoming as they arrive, I'm sure you do this, letting them know that you're glad that they are participating today, using their name throughout the engagement, saying goodbye at the end, letting time for them to get to know each other. So maybe you have to have that space, like, you know, your gym, you have to get that fitness class out, but maybe you can say, hey, if anybody wants to go for coffee after, we'll meet you in the foyer, you know, just, or if you need to warm down more, let's walk around the facility. Pay attention to the folks that are quiet. That's important that you check in with them before you lose them. How about when the session is ending? How do you follow up to make sure that they re-register? Do you send email? Did you send a text? Did you send home a flyer? And somehow I'd love to see a better system of helping parents like me with the whole knowing the registration date. And then, so I actually got up at 6 and I registered my kid for the aquatic session. Now I need that registration confirmation to embed into my calendar so I actually know when it starts, because I can't remember if I actually got in on Monday at 3:45 or was it 4:45 or Tuesday at 4. You know what I'm talking about. We need to just help users get there with whatever digital help and good old fashioned send home the flyer, tell a friend, here's a discount coupon to share with somebody who's never tried it before. Okay, preventing injury. Lastly, we'll discuss injury prevention. Girls and young women are at greater risk of experiencing certain injuries while being physically active. Some of you may have heard about concussions are more acute in female soccer players, for example. And did you know it's because they didn't have strength in their neck? And that's something we can do, right? We can encourage that. Having a knowledge of these injuries and what causes them will allow you to be better prepared against them. Depending on the nature of the injuries, some may require you to educate both your participants and your parents. The Keeping Girls in Sport e-module, again, is full of valuable information on this topic. There are preventative measures that we can do. For mechanical injury, teaching the fundamental movement skills will allow girls to have that foundation and strength to more complex moves. So how about, can you integrate your fitness trainers, that high-level certification, with maybe some of the more junior recreational programs? They can maybe, the fitness trainers can be there as special guests in the first 10 minutes to really ensure that the warm-up is safe and age-appropriate, and looking at the preventative measures like knee strength and neck strength for concussions and knee strength, because again, ACLs are quite common. Education with both parents and participants about energetic injuries is also a great preventive measure. So, I mean, what we're talking about there is when they don't have enough fuel and they just are not eating enough, especially after school. So that's why that snack time is so important. Okay, Vanessa, do you want to walk us through this next scenario activity, or?
Yes, I will. So we have about 8 minutes before the remaining 10 minutes for questions. I'll read the scenario quickly and then I'll pop everybody into breakout rooms to discuss some questions. So the scenario reads, you are a program leader toward the end of your last program cycle. You notice the attendance of the girls in your co-ed recreational program, for example, multi-sport, drastically decreased. When you asked one of your participants why fewer girls were attending, she explained that the boys don't pass and the number of the girls were bullying each other at school. The majority of the girls register again for the upcoming program cycle, but how do you plan for the next program cycle knowing all of this? So that's the main question underlying. How do you plan around this? How do you interpret this information? But we're also going to ask you 3 key questions. So the first question is, what is the underlying issue? So identifying that. We're going to consult. So who do you need more information from? And then how can you track if the change you're suggesting is having a positive impact? So I'll put those in the chat right now. Okay, and then I will launch the breakout rooms. There'll be 5 or 6 of you to a room, and you'll have 5 minutes to discuss. Then we'll come back together and we will share some of the responses. Okay. Sorry, this is just taking another moment. I'll be available to answer any questions and I'll pop in and out of the rooms. So feel free to talk to me and have a good one. See you in a couple minutes.